This is Sue Jackson of the Book by Book blog, here with my June reading wrap-up. I was focused on big books in June. At the end of May, I kicked off my annual Big Book Summer Challenge, and so I dove right into that in June. So did my husband and a lot of other people. I host this challenge every summer. Anyone can join. There are lots of bloggers, booktubers, and just regular readers that are a part of this challenge and enjoying the camaraderie. So the idea is to read some of those bigger books that are maybe collecting dust on your shelves. That's the case with me. Or perhaps, have been on your TBR list for ages and you just normally feel like you don't have time for them. So the idea is to make time during the summer to tackle some of those bigger books. A big book is defined as anything 400 pages or more, so they're not necessarily all that big, depending on what you choose. And the goals are entirely up to you. You can read one big book during the summer. You can read two. You can do what I do and pick a whole stack from your bookshelf to choose from. It's entirely up to you. And you have all the way until the early September to finish whatever you decide to do. So there's still plenty of time to join the fun. I'll include details down below, my Big Book Summer intro video, as well as the sign-up page on my blog. So I hope you'll join the fun. So at the beginning of June, I jumped right into it. My first big book of the summer was End of Watch by Stephen King. Now this is the third and final book in his Mr. Mercedes trilogy. So I won't tell you too much about the plot of this one because I don't want to give it away. But just to give you an overview of the trilogy, it begins with Mr. Mercedes, which is about a criminal who steals a large Mercedes automobile and drives into a crowd of people who are waiting in line at a job fair. This is a horrific crime. 8 people die. Many people are horribly injured, and they never catch the guy. So this is the case that retired police detective Bill Hodges just still sticks with him. The fact that they never caught the guy really bothers him. He's retired now. He's not too happy being retired. And out of the blue, the criminal who perpetuated the crime sends Bill a letter taunting him for never catching him. And this gets Bill, back into investigative mode and looking into the case again. So that's what the first book is all about. In the second book, Finders Keepers, and these first 2 books I read previously. Mr. Mercedes actually last Big Book Summer 2020, and this one I think around Christmas time. In this second book, Bill has teamed up with a partner, Holly Gibney, who was introduced in the first book. Holly is a very nervous woman. She's got autistic characteristics. She's not good with people, but she is brilliant. And so in the second book, she and Bill team up. They start their own investigative agency called Finders Keepers. And the case in this second book is about a stolen manuscript. So it's a very bookish plot, which I really enjoyed. Those first 2 books are pretty much just mainstream mystery thrillers, which is unusual for Stephen King. In this third book that I just read in June, End of Watch, it gets a little more into classic King territory. There are some supernatural elements here, in addition to the case they're trying to solve. There's been a series of suspicious-seeming suicides, and the police aren't investigating, but Bill and Holly really think there's something wrong, so they look into it. So this gets into a little more of the classic King creepiness. It's a great end to the trilogy, and I really enjoyed it. And now my husband's happy because we've started season 2 of the Mr. Mercedes TV show, which is excellent, by the way, if you're looking for a new TV show to watch. So that was my first big book of the summer and my first book of June. Next in June, I had to set aside my big books temporarily to read one last book for one of my book groups. And then they both take a break for the summer. So that last book was The Mighty Queens of Freeville, a mother, a daughter, and the town that raised them. And this is a memoir by Amy Dickinson, who is the famous advice columnist, Ask Amy. So this is a very personal memoir. It's not like her columns. It's quite, she gets into a lot of personal stuff. So it begins with her very unexpected divorce, which left her as a single mother, and just, she never saw the divorce coming. So she was just really in bad shape. So she moved back to her hometown of Freeville, New York. Just to heal, to be surrounded by family. Now, most of Amy's family happens to be women. There are a lot of other divorced single women in her family. Her daughter's the one that came up with the moniker, the Mighty Queens of Freeville. And so it's a great place for her to heal and decide what to do with the rest of her life. So the memoir goes into her raising her daughter by herself, her return to Freeville, and even how she completely stumbled into the Ask Amy gig, which has made her famous now. It's a very warm and honest memoir, but it's also very funny. I haven't read her column because our newspaper doesn't carry it, but I have heard her on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, a very funny NPR news quiz. So I knew she had a good sense of humor, and it really comes across in the book. Most of my book group enjoyed it. I think everybody enjoyed it, and I did too. So that was a fun read. I spent the rest of June reading my second big book of the summer, The Lost Time Accidents by John Ray. I first heard about this book on a podcast called The Readers, which I don't think is around anymore. And this is from a long time ago when it was hosted by Simon and Gavin. And Gavin had similar reading taste to me. He said he loved anything dealing with time travel or any sort of time-twisting plot. And Gavin said that this was one of his favorite books. So, this was years ago. I put it on my TBR. I marked it with an asterisk. And my husband gave it to me for Christmas last year, so I finally got to read it. So let me just say up front, this is a really weird book. It's very complex and intricate. It's strange, but I ended up really enjoying it. So, how to explain it? It begins with the narrator, who is a young man named Waldemar Tolliver. So maybe you can see some of the weirdness already. And he is stuck outside of time. For the rest of the world, time is passing normally, but he's trapped in his aunt's, they were very eccentric, his eccentric aunt's old apartment, which is like hoarders times 100. And he's stuck in that place and in a single moment in time while the rest of the world moves forward without him. So while he's stuck, he decides to write his family's history. And so the book goes back and forth in time between his present and him telling the story of his family. So his great-grandfather, his grandfather, and his great-uncle were all obsessed with time. The three of them were all physicists. The family lore is that his great-grandfather made some amazing discovery about the nature of time and then was instantly killed in an accident. This was the early 1900s. So, and since then, everyone in the family's been looking for the rest of his notes that explain precisely what this amazing discovery was. So his grandfather was obsessed with this. His great uncle was so obsessed that, get ready for some of that weirdness, he became a notorious Nazi who did time experiments on people in concentration camps. So there's a little darkness woven in here too. Waldemar, unfortunately, is actually named after that great uncle. So he's not real pleased with that. Waldemar's own father broke with family tradition. He wanted nothing to do with this obsession. He said he was a man of science focused on realism, but he ended up being a rather famous author of smut-filled sci-fi. That adds a lot of humor to the book. So he did, his dad unintentionally did end up dealing with time his whole life, just in fiction. And Waldemar himself didn't know a lot about this family history until, he started collecting this information and writing it all down. So that's the book. It's complex. It's a very intricate story, but it's also engrossing. I never felt like it was dragging or slow. It is a big book, but, I enjoyed it from beginning to end. It's also very, very funny. I was often laughing out loud. So I really enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun. Perhaps not for everyone, but a lot of fun nonetheless. The Lost Time Accidents by John Ray. On audio in June, I listened to 2 big books. And yes, audios also count for big books. You just look up what the page number in the print edition is, and if it's 400 or more, it counts. So the first big book audio I listened to this summer was The 7 or 8 Deaths of Stella Fortuna by Juliet Grimes. I enjoyed this book, but it's very dark. So the plot here is about a woman named Stella who endures 7, maybe 8 near-death experiences, many of them as a small child, but going on into adulthood. The beginning of the novel is set in a mountainous village in Italy. Beautiful setting. Her childhood was difficult. They had very little money. Her father was first off in World War I and then just kept abandoning the family. He never sent money home. So, they were really scraping by, but they were relatively happy. Stella had a great relationship with her mother. She adored her little sister Tina and really protected her. And they had family around them, and it was a beautiful place to live. Things changed quite a bit just before World War II, when the family emigrates to America. They settle in Connecticut, and in fact, most of the story of Stella Fortuna is told by an unnamed young relative in the present day in Connecticut, who's telling the readers the story of her grandmother and her great aunt, Stella's younger sister, Tina. So most of the story is told that way. As I said, it's a good novel. It's very well written. The settings, both in Italy and in America, are beautifully rendered. Very, you just feel like you're there. The historical aspects were fascinating. Really got into what was happening in the world and how it affected Stella and her family. But, as I said, it's a very dark book. And you probably think I should have known that from the title. It's all about death or near death. But that's not really what I'm talking about. There are some really disturbing scenes in the novel, scenes of horrible abuse. And personally, I just found that really hard to listen to. Maybe it would have been different in print. I don't know. But Stella lived a very unhappy life long term, and There was a lot of bad stuff. So while I enjoyed it, it was a big book, and that much darkness for that long just kind of got to me after a while. To be honest, I was kind of relieved when I finished it. But it is well written and engrossing, and the characters are in-depth and multi-dimensional. So that's The 7 or 8 Deaths of Stella Fortuna by Juliet Grames. My final big book for June and my final audiobook was All of This Is True by Lygia de Peñaflor. Now, this was a YA novel, which I thought would be a good, faster-paced switch for me after the darkness and heaviness of Stella Fortuna. It is kind of a mild thriller, so there is some tension there and some bad things do happen, but it was a great choice. I really enjoyed it. So the idea here in All of This Is True is that a group of teens become obsessed with a particular author, as I'm sure you could see yourself doing as a teen or even as an adult. And this group, they love this first novel by the author. They just become obsessed with the author. So when the author comes to town for a book signing, they go and they are thrilled when their wildest dreams come true. Besides meeting the author at the book signing, she invites this group out with her afterward to like a coffee shop type place. And they end up hanging out with her and becoming friends with her. So these teens are living their dream. And then the author's second novel is published, and it is all about them. Very thinly veiled. I mean, even the names are similar. In that novel that the author has written, in addition to revealing a lot of private things about the group, she also reveals a huge secret that one teen boy was carrying. And at the beginning of the novel that one of the teens is in the hospital and badly injured. So it's a good setup, a good plot, but what makes this book really stand out is the way it's written and the way the audio was done. So it's written all from primary sources. The whole thing it's all after the fact. It's TV interviews, newspaper articles, texts and emails, even excerpts from this second novel that the fictional author wrote, all blend in to tell this story in hindsight of how it all started, what happened, and how they came to where they are now. So there's a bit of tension there because you don't know what happened to this one teen, how he ended up in the hospital, what's going to happen to him. So there's some tension there. Also, the reader doesn't really know the boy's secret. I figured out the twist pretty early on, but that in no way affected my enjoyment of the book. Because the other great thing about this book is that the audio is made with a full cast. So there are 15 different narrators, the interviewer, the author, each of the teens, all jumping in to teachers at the school, the kids' parents, all jumping in to tell this story. So between the primary sources and the way the audio is done, it's just very immersive. You feel like you're listening to a play. And I just really enjoyed it. It's totally engrossed in it. And it's just a really unique plot and well told. That's All of This Is True, a YA novel by Lygia de Peñaflor. So that was my June reading month. Mostly big books, as it usually is for me during the summer. And I really enjoyed them. If I had to choose a favorite, it was probably that last one, the YA novel, All of This Is True. So I would love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments down below, what did you read in June? What was your favorite of the books you read in June? And remember to sign up for Big Book Summer so that you can join me and all the rest in the fun. Also remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel.